4 runs in 3 days for Cleveland's bats. Changes are coming, right? 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 In Cleveland's defense, this is something that nobody could have foreseen. We couldn't forecast that they were going to have these issues against right-handed pitching. No one really knew that they had these problems. This kind of just popped up out of nowhere, like a sudden thunderstorm we've had over the past few days. Really, who could have seen this coming?
It's weird to remember they used to have a lineup filled with left-handed hitters. You had the Naquins and the Zimmers and the Kipnisses, and it felt like for years and years and years everyone was yelling for a right-handed power bat, and suddenly they can't hit righties. They need a lefty. A left-handed power bat.
Suddenly. Man, it's not like either one of us talked about the fact that their deadline acquisition in terms of offense was a guy that excels against left-handed pitching, which the numbers have been good against lefties this year. Now, for whatever reason, teams still want to go with the lefties against Cleveland, especially late in the game. We even saw that on Sunday against Milwaukee. And for the most part, when they unload, they were talking about in the broadcast, unloading the clip. When they want to go to the pinch hitters, Noel started in this game, but Fry is part of that, Freeman's part of that. It makes sense, especially down at the bottom of the lineup. I don't have any big concerns, actually, about this team facing left-handers at the moment. It's the majority of the league which still throws with the right hand that I am semi-alarmed. And we could sit here today, and I think we will, over the next hour or so. And hi, welcome to the show. It's the Selbyus Godcast. I'm TJ, that's Zach. We have a special surprise lined up for the birthday boy coming up. I do have something. I promise I have something. Happy birthday to you as we record this on Sunday.
I've never felt less prepared for an episode.
Why? You know I'm always springing something upon you. Zach, we can talk about changes that they could make, that they should make. It's not going to remedy everything. It's not going to. But I'm to the point now where I wonder why wouldn't you at least make the change? Because Tyler Freeman against a righty, not working. Daniel Schneemann has been exposed at this level, at least at this point, and he's in an advanced age prospect here. So how much leash do you give a guy like that? I mean, there just seems to be maybe not clear-cut answers, but there are enough questions against right-handed pitching that I'd start to say, maybe Kyle Manzardo would be better. Maybe Juan Brito would be better. George Valero would be better. Or just can continue to go down the line.
Yeah, I remember saying this at one point a year ago that I don't want to pretend like calling up Kyle Manzardo is the elixir, that's going to solve every issue and he's the savior and the offense will be perfectly fine if they do that. But the front office dragging its feet as long as it has made it feel like that. Like, I don't think a player pays enough attention to all the noise that we hear, that fans hear and create, that we create too. So I don't think like a certain player, whether it's Manzardo or Valera, would feel that pressure. Like they have to do that because everyone's been just clamoring for them forever. But it's reached that point where we talk about it so much. We've been talking about it for weeks. And if it happens, like if Manzardo comes back up and just struggles or is ho-hum for a few weeks, like then people are going to say, oh, see, like you acted like this guy was the second coming. And it's like, no, it's just a pretty obvious move to make that hasn't been made. They have faced 9 right-handed starters the last 10 games. The perfect opportunity for this. And they passed. And, there have been times where maybe we start campaigning for someone who's not ready, someone who's lighting it up. And, there are probably reasons why they're not on the Major League roster. Like Owen Miller, hello, just because he's hitting .450 at AAA doesn't mean that bat's going to play in the majors. Manzardo's got more than 700 plate appearances in AAA. He's 24 years old. I do not know what he needs to learn facing some overmatched 21-year-old or some retread who's 33 and looking to hang on for another year. I don't know what he's going to learn there. You've talked plenty about George Valera and maybe the sense of urgency needed with him because of his options situation. I just there are interesting choices here that could help you, and you're losing a lot of close games, like 2-1, 2-0. I'm not saying Kyle Manzardo or George Valera is the difference, but absolutely could be in a 1-run loss, 2-run loss. And when you're just ill-equipped and the way you're emptying your bench, nothing's been smooth. It just hasn't felt right. It's felt like it has felt like they have someone on the injured list who they're getting back soon. And you're just like, well, when this person comes back, it'll be okay. That doesn't exist. This is what they've got. This is what they've been rolling with. And it's just not enough.
I feel like they're doing a disservice to their first-year manager.
Yeah.
Who might be the front runner for manager of the year. I almost said rookie of the year. For manager of the year. Rookie manager of the year.
He's the left-handed bat they need.
Maybe. They showed the clip of Plesac making the barehanded play, which the Sandlin play really closely resembled it, and Vogt was on third base for that Plesac barehanded grab, jump, throw play. It just becomes so, Vogt has just so seamlessly slid into being the manager that I forget, oh yeah, just not that long ago, that guy was a pretty good player. Maybe they could use that stick in the lineup. I can tell you, it's a little bit perplexing, yes, but I think almost concerning for me when you don't go to these guys, because I think it's obvious. And nobody should be saying, I don't think they are saying that these guys would be the clear-cut answer. But at some point, you have to recognize what you're doing is not working. How many opportunities do you need to give Tyler Freeman this year before you felt like you did your due diligence on making sure that guy is not a guy, at least for the rest of this year, that needs to be in the lineup every single day? You brought Lane Thomas over here, and he sucked against everybody, but absolutely against right-handed pitching, which is not the surprise. I think he'll be fine against lefties. We're going to continue to play him against lefties. But is he screaming that he should be in there against righties? And Jhonkensy Noel, I love what he's done so far. Done more than anybody would have expected at the beginning of the year. And we can talk more about Noel. I know you wrapped it up very succinctly at the end of our Patreon show, just kind of what his staying power is, but this is still a guy that has massive holes in his swing and his game right now. Not a complete product. There just seems to be easy swaps that could be made within this team. And the fact that they're not making them, and I think they're so easy, it makes me wonder, do they just think that Manzardo stinks? Do they just not believe that this guy is capable of even being a league average stick against righties for the rest of the year? Do they think he's that bad? And if that's the case, did they miss on him in such grand fashion last year? Or have they seen something new in him that they don't believe that he's now the hitter that they thought he was at this point last year? What has happened with him? And he's just one of many you could make that case with. Brito, they bet on. Valera for years was near the top of their prospect list. And we're getting calls in the Discord for seeing Arias back up here. And you know what? The way he swung the bat at AAA, maybe over Schneemann at this point. But I just feel like you're bashing your head against the wall, Zach. At what point do you say, hey, let's try something different? Let's switch up the chemistry here. Let's see if we can introduce something, even if it's like Noel has been a spark plug. Let's see if you can find a spark plug for a week. And then that'll get you through another week. Then you'll see where you're at. Then you make another call.
The Arias thing is hilarious to me. It's like in wrestling, that heel character that you just cannot stand. Their music hits and you're just like, oh, get off my TV screen. Please just go away. And then they do. And he disappears for a month. And then they come back and absence makes the heart grow fonder. And the product you've been watching got kind of stale. And oh my God, this guy, he's a face now. I want to cheer him.
Are you saying he's Roman Reigns?
Is that what's happening?
Back. Yeah, Roman Reigns, he's the OTC, he's the original tribal chief. Everyone loves him now after he was the biggest heel in the company for years. So maybe that's Gabby Arias now.
I was thinking more like Triple H when he tore his quad. The two-man power trip ended, and he came back, won the Royal Rumble. But anyway, that's the extent of that's my wrestling timeline for you.
Yeah, sure.
I think that the crux of the issue here is actually David Fry. I think this is all intertwined. Really, I think that the four keys for this offense to get back on track. I mean, number one, Stephen Kwan. If you said at the beginning of the year, hey, this guy's going to hit 316 and have an OPS over 800 and have more home runs than he had in his first 2 years combined, you'd say, sign me up. What an incredible season. And that's still true, but because he was hotter than hell for a couple months, it's taken a free fall to get to where he is now. And they need something in between. They need that table setter at the top of the lineup. I think number two, Lane Thomas. It's almost like they should, Tuesday at Yankee Stadium, when he walks in, they should pretend it's his first day. Like, everyone should go introduce themselves to him. They should show him his jersey like he's never seen Thomas in Guardians Navy before. Pretend that he has not been here for 3 weeks and this is brand new, and just that never happened. Just treat it like it's his first day. Hey kid, like, welcome to the team. I know we got a tough matchup the next few days, but we really think you can help us.
Can you
Good
believe
luck
we're
out there.
facing a lefty every single at bat for the rest of this year?
I mean, I think is he 6 for 53 since he came here, and he had 3 hits in his first 2 games, so he's like 3 for 45 since then, with like 20 strikeouts. It's crazy because I think people have already flushed, and understandably so, the fact that he got hurt in Washington at the end of April, missed about a month. And when he came back, he was a really good hitter for 2 months, including having a 27-game on-base streak at the time he was traded. And it's been brutal. And he's also been put in, it's tough because I want to say situations that are not helping him, like not the best positions to succeed, by hitting second or fifth against a righty. But when they made that trade, like, they did it thinking this guy is an everyday player for us or something very close to it. So on one hand, I want to cut him some slack, but on the other, it's like, that's who you're supposed to be. And you look at his numbers from last year, 28 home runs. You know, we know he can steal a bunch of bases. He's got elite speed. So it's disappointing. And I almost, especially because they're fine with him playing center. So that gives you even more flexibility. But he can't be just strictly a platoon against lefties, because they don't have the guys against righties right now.
Sure. I mean, if you're going to say Will Brennan is the guy against righties, since he's come back, he has been that guy, and overall is okay against righties. But the problem is you also need Brennan over at another position, too. You only have so many guys that you think are even capable of being above water against right-handed pitching right now. And Lane Thomas was supposed to be one of those guys. And he's entering today against right-handed pitching. I mean, really, it's been against everybody, but he's got a 21 WRC plus against righties since being acquired. His slash line, his average with Cleveland is the same as Austin Hedges against righties, by the way, this year, 105 to 105. It's just, that's not good. That was not supposed to be the deadline acquisition sort of production that you're getting there. And we said at the time, we understood that he had his limitations against righties. We weren't asking for the sun, moon, and stars. Just be good enough against righties that it justifies you being in there pretty much every single day and making the other team's choices harder late in games, sticking him in a spot in the lineup where a team can't just go get a lefty and they're just going to buzzsaw their way through your lineup. Well, if you're not hitting against anybody, I mean, forget lefties or righties, it's not working right now.
So Kwan, Lane Thomas, and then the other two are inherently connected, because it is David Fry and it's whoever they want to call up, who we mentioned at the start. And they're connected because I think the turning point in the season, and we didn't know it then, was Fry suffering some elbow injury, inflammation. But again, like, I can't stress enough how this team, you thought they were secretive in previous years. I mean, they love to hint at stuff, but they won't tell you what they're hinting at when you press them on it. You know, Stephen Vogt mentioned that Kwan has been beat up dealing with some things. And then you go and ask Kwan, and he says, yeah, I mean, everybody's beat up at this point in the year. We've played 100-some games. They've referenced Josh Naylor being beat up all year, but Naylor will stare through your soul if you try to ask him about it, and no one else wants to clarify what that is. And with David Fry, we know he had some inflammation in his elbow, but they haven't used it as an excuse. He's still been in there most days, and he shrugs it off. But I can see the giant wrap on his elbow after every game, and I can also see that he has not played catcher or the outfield. So that has really hurt them, because if he was struggling against righties, but you believed enough in what he did to an extent, you know, there was certainly some hitting above his skis the first couple months when his OPS was behind only Aaron Judge. But, you know, there's talent there, right? So you think he could be better than he's been the last couple months against righties. You think what he did the first couple months was over his head. If it falls somewhere in the middle, that's fine. If he can catch and take, you know, some of the burden off Bo Naylor, or move to the outfield to take some of the burden off Lane Thomas or Noel or whoever, like, you can live with that. But when he's your DH most days and he's been struggling to this degree, that kills them. That's why Kyle Manzardo's not up, because they're sticking with David Fry, and David Fry can't play anywhere but first base, and that's where Josh Naylor is. So until that changes, or they have a change of heart in how they want to deploy everybody, this is what you got. You know, maybe that changes Tuesday. I don't know. If I were in charge, I would have changed some things a long time ago, especially with all the righties they faced recently. But that's the thing that's just, it's killing them, because they seem to not want to run away from Fry completely. Although, again, like, they have sat him more often against righties lately than they had been the, I don't know, 6 weeks before that. He's been struggling since like June. So I don't know. I don't know how you solve that. But to have him, who is defensively limited, and Hedges on your bench is a killer. And I think that's why they want Schneemann and Freeman, because those are two versatile guys. So if you called up Manzardo, and then you got Manzardo, Fry, and Hedges, and Naylor, like, that's four guys who are really just, well, Hedges is a catcher, but the other three are DH, first base. Like, it's
okay.
What do you do?
Okay, that's fine, but flexibility is nice, but, you know, putting up runs are more important. And I'm not
Agreed.
yelling
I
at you.
don't want this to sound like I'm like, oh no, like they have to do this. Sorry, no, God no.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, yes, you need flexibility on the bench. You need to make sure all the pieces fit. But most importantly, I need a lineup every single day that gives me a chance to put up more than 2 runs. And lately, this offense has been fueled pretty much only by home runs. And they went through a 5-game winning streak, and now they're met with 3-game losing streak, and pretty much all their runs here of late have come via home runs. And even when they're not hitting him, it looks like they're trying to. And I know it's easy for me to sit here in my basement and say, don't try to hit home runs when your team's not doing anything. Sure. Everyone feels like they got to be the guy. I get it. Jose's up there. He looks like he's swinging for the fence. I get it. But you're going to do that, then you know what the other team's going to do? Like what the Brewers did this entire series. In and out, up and down, changing speeds. You're in a rocking chair. You can't do shit. And that's just not a sustainable thing for this offense, to sit here and live and die with a home run. They got one guy in the lineup that is that boom or bust now when John Kensey Noel plays, but the rest of the lineup is not built that way. Even Jose is not at his best when it's only home runs. Josh Naylor's got to be more than just a home run hitter. Those things are great, and they have come at great times this year. I'm not saying I don't appreciate the added power. They needed that in this offense if they were going to be a more complete unit. But it seems like, you know, in the effort of chasing more impact for their bats, Stephen Kwan, we've talked about it. Is he not necessarily changing home runs, but in trying to hit for more oomph, has he gotten out of sorts offensively? Right now, I can't even say that I would bet with any certainty that he's going to finish above the year over 300, which
It's
is crazy
insane.
considering that he was near 400 at one point this year
Do you
and
know
didn't
what-
look like he was slowing down at all.
He had an at-bat Sunday that was like the best at-bat I've seen him take in weeks, where he worked the count. He was up 3-1 on Colin Ray, and then, wasn't it Sunday? Yeah. And then slapped the single to left field
Yeah.
to break up the no-hitter. And it was the first time in a while where it felt like he was dictating the action, which is how it usually is for him. It's usually not that way for most hitters. You know, the pitcher's always dictating things, but the pitcher has so many things to consider when facing him because you know he's not going to chase. But he had gotten, I don't know, you could see, like, I think pitchers have started to learn, like, he's turning on those inside fastballs now. So you have to be really careful there. So they're pitching him away, and he's got to adjust back. And I think he will. Like, he's far from the problem, even though he's been really slumping for the last few weeks. He's not the issue, but
he should be the solution. He should be part of the solution, and he's not that either. He's not
so
that.
how
right now.
how much better do you feel about a lineup when the leadoff hitter is just a pain in the ass? Right? Like, this team never scores in the first inning. Feels like it's always 1, 2, 3. And they've had issues in the number 2 spot. They have not found anyone to hit between Quan and Ramirez. I don't know why they don't just bump Ramirez up to 2, but whatever. But when Quan's not going well and you don't know who your number 2 hitter should be, it's tough to get something going.
I mean, hey, Will Brennan credit for providing some spark there occasionally since coming back, but that's not a long-term thing. It's proven it's not a long-term thing. And with Quan, I feel like such a jerk because the point you made earlier in the show about look at what his numbers are, look at what his home runs are, look at all the strides he's made offensively in the total of his season. Who could complain about that? And here's me going like, I kind of want to, at least here recently. And we even did that on the Patreon show. And then I think he followed that up almost immediately with a home run. And I'm like, okay, like, you just keep doing it. And I guess I'll look like the jerk that is complaining about it. But he has not been as much of a pest. And guys they're trying to get above his barrel. And how many pop-ups have we seen, or just weak fly balls? And there's a frustration there when he's doing it. He knows I'm not doing what I want to offensively. And you're right, to see a little bit of that old spark plug Stephen Kwan lift the ball over the shortstop's head, just a liner into left field to break up the no-hitter, just was reminiscent of that. Okay, that was the guy that was hitting 400 with the added power. If it means you have to sacrifice some of this power, we're all okay with that because, as we've said, nobody's living and dying with those home runs. A lot of them have meant something. And we had it on the show. You said one of them was a temperature shifter. You're just the club needed the offense. What was it? The leadoff bomb? Was it a leadoff bomb? I think.
Yeah, in Minnesota.
They desperately needed that
Saturday game.
Yeah, they desperately needed that. But they desperately need Stephen Kwan, the guy that not even was hitting 330, 340, but just made life difficult on the pitcher, taking his pitches, fouling pitches off. But too many times it's the pitcher that doesn't look frustrated. It's been Kwan lately. And I get frustrated because I know he's a better hitter than that. And I know he expects more from himself than what he's given this club. Really, I mean, you can go back probably further back than the All-Star break. But even if you want to just reference the All-Star break, since then, he has not been as good as he should be for this club.
So we've talked about, like, our episode last week was literally called Pick Your Endpoints, Arbitrary Endpoints. And it's funny that they keep doing this. If you look at their last 20 games, it's win 5, lose 7, win 5, lose 3. And so it's difficult to handicap. It feels like every time we come here, it's either play the party music or play the funeral music. And the main point, especially at this juncture of the season, you've got 6 weeks left of the regular season. You're looking for evidence that like there are good days ahead. This is when you're supposed, it's the stretch run, right? I know the 2017 team collapsed against the Yankees in the playoffs. I'm well aware that season did not end the way it should have, and this is maybe going to hurt the point I'm going to make. But it is right around now where that team in 2017 rattled off 22 in a row. And not just 22 in a row, but then they kept winning after that too. They had some insane streak. I remember being in Seattle and had not realized, like I vividly remember reading in the postgame notes that like, oh, the Indians have won like 33 of 36 games or something insane like that. That team, because I'll never forget you covering that West Coast trip and being like, this team sucks. And then 5 minutes later, they make history. But that team, you knew they had a ton of talent, and then they just finally put it all together. That's what you're looking for. You are looking to put it all together, to build the healthy habits that you hope sustain you through October. And you have to pick like the lens that makes the most sense to help you predict the future, basically, right? So if I'm looking at this team and I'm trying to find evidence of like how they'll handle the next 6 weeks, how they'll survive this, or will they thrive? Will they completely collapse? I mean, you look at the standings and it's insane. The Astros are only 4.5 games back of the Guardians. The Astros, who were like 30 and 40 at one point. You know, the Yankees and the Orioles and the Guardians and the Twins and the Royals and the Astros are all right on top of each other. So, like, I think the Guardians are fine. I think they're going to make the playoffs, but there's a big difference here between 1st and 6th, and there's not much separating those spots in the standings. So I'm trying to figure out, am I supposed to believe in the last 3 games, the last 8 games, the last 15 games, the last 20 games? Do I give a damn what happened in April and May? You know, what am I supposed to use to figure out what's going to happen over the next 6 weeks? And then I also think, you know, if you're ever going to call people up, if you're ever going to make some changes, you got to make them now. Like, this is when you're supposed to set the table for this run. This is when the dog days of August have come. I think guys have, especially now because you're getting an off day. You just had an off day a few days ago. Like, get your second wind and let it carry you until the end. But this is when you have to form healthy habits. This is when you have to, like, the bullpen has worked its ass off all season long, and like, give them help. I don't know. I feel like I didn't make any point there, but I just like, this is when you're supposed to take off, I guess. The good teams start trending in the direction they want to trend now.
Imagine thinking any one of us is going to come up with the right answer at this point. Like, I've been watching baseball long enough to realize we don't know what's going to happen Tuesday beyond 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month into the postseason. It is entirely unpredictable. But we sit here and do this because, as we say all the time, we take the temperature of that moment. That's all this show is. We're planting the flag. This is how we feel today. And then by the middle of the week, here's another flag. And they're just checkpoints throughout the entire season and throughout this journey and throughout life. That's all this podcast is. But in doing that, you're mentioning, you know, should we look at the 5-game winning streak? How much should you weigh a 3-game losing streak against a really good team? Brewers are really good. Do you look at the fact that they lost 7 in a row before that? Do you look at the entire season? I think it all gets messy. What is important? Let's look at the individual facets of where this team is at. Offensively, we're talking about it. There are still some elements despite the fact that Kwan has been disappointing to me, I still think that's a good hitter. I'm glad he's here. Jose Ramirez, MVP candidate every single year. Josh Naylor, has he been exactly what I hoped he would be this year? Maybe not in terms of how he's gotten there, but he's still a good hitter. Still good individual pieces on this team. There is definitely reason and clear upgrades that could be made. We'll see what happens there. Beyond that, starting pitching in this series, you got 2 really good games. Yeah, I was happy to see Ben Lively bounce back and have one of those outings that he's had through much of this year. It was just very solid. Tanner Bybee, just what we have grown to expect from Tanner Bybee. Gavin Williams gets got for the 3-run home run in the first inning, which wasn't the worst pitch in the world. 3-run home run, okay. But still, there were still some good elements within his start. Not totally. Rotation has been such a sticking point for us, such a reason for concern. And yet, coming out of this series, rotation wasn't really the problem for much of this. In fact, we'll find out what happens with Cobb and Boyd in Yankee Stadium. That'll probably dictate how we feel a lot more about how this rotation is going to look moving forward. But I at least take some joy in not having to light my hair on fire every single show in a pure panic about how they're going to get through 5 innings every single start. That to me has calmed down a little bit. And that does look like a group of 5 that maybe could just be competitive enough to give you a chance every single night with that bullpen that has been elite for much of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the expectations were so low with Carrasco, Cantillo, whoever they were plugging in, even Allen and McKenzie at points, that just having a veteran presence, a guy you trust to give you 5 innings, even if it's 3 runs, like that's, again, we said last week, like the floor has been raised, and that helps a lot. Not really worried about the rotation. I mean, like you said, like I might change my tune in a couple days, but that's not the issue. And they've done such a good job all year of, I think, for the most part, pulling guys at the right time. There have been some exceptions, but you know, they've done all right. And I think the way they've leveraged the bullpen, like they know exactly what they need out of a starting pitcher. And so you're not going to need Boyd and Cobb to go 7. You know, but you finally have 5 guys you trust who can get you 5. And you didn't have that. You had like 3 out of 5 for most of the season. So that makes a big difference. You're right. Like that's going to be an interesting environment for a couple guys who probably have a lot of rust. But don't you already feel more confident in Boyd and Cobb at Yankee Stadium than you would have with Carrasco or Cantillo? Poor Cantillo had to face the Phillies and Orioles in his first 2 starts.
Go get him, kid.
Yeah.
Between the rotation, which feels so much more calmed down now, with the bullpen continuing to do the bullpen thing. Yeah, don't put as much on them, but the rest of this year I'm going to continue to trust those guys. I have no reason not to trust them. And then a defense that is really good. That's another part, and that gets lost when you're not performing, when you're not scoring any runs, the entire team looks dead. It looks like that zombie baseball has returned. But the defense is really good. For Rocchio, I do not want to see him offensively, but I do not mind seeing him defensively because he's been very good in terms of defensive runs saved. Was he at a -11 or 11 runs saved? That's really good. Shortstop, second base, up the middle. Jose's been solid. Of course, Naylor, as we've covered before, has had his moments at first base this year. But for all the changes in the outfield, you still have a very solid outfield. Freeman, that catch he made this series to help an inning from imploding. You've got some, for as much as I'm frustrated with the bats right now, and I just don't know where they're going to get answers against right-handed pitching unless you make some changes. And again, nobody believes they're the answers, but just make the changes, change something up so it's not just repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. But everything else, Zach, the starting pitching kind of feels like it's in the right direction now. The bullpen is great, and the defense is catching the ball. Got some elements here of some good things happening. I don't want to lose sight of that, I guess. I don't want to let everything funnel down to just the fact that I didn't see any runs in this series and say, well, this team is in a bad place. I don't know that this team is in a bad place. I just have a lot of questions about how they're going to be able to score runs if their superstar players aren't hitting bombs every single night.
Yeah, I mean, When it's time for first pitch, do you feel like they're going to win that night?
Depends.
Oh, play that sounder.
It depends on, are they coming off of a 5-game winning streak or a 3-game losing streak or 7-game losing streak? Because whatever you see, it feels like the opposite will never happen again. Doesn't it feel like when they're on a winning streak, they're never going to lose? How are they ever going to lose a game again? And then when they're on a losing streak, what if they just lose every single game the rest of the year? That's always how it feels.
It's like when it's February 9th in Northeast Ohio. It's like, well, I haven't seen the sun for 43 straight days, so odds are tomorrow it's going to be 27 and cloudy again.
Do you feel like this is a club that can maintain itself through the rest of this year? Do you have serious questions now? And where's the biggest question right now?
I mean, the biggest question is the offense. But we also every fan base is in its own bubble. And except for the Twins and Guardians crossing over into each other's, I think. All these teams are flawed. I don't think there's going to be a team that wins 100 games. I think you're going to see so many teams, and it's not even just the American League, but like look at the National League, and the Phillies, Brewers, Dodgers, Padres, and Diamondbacks are all right on top of each other. I mean, there's like, I look at this twice a day. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 10 teams within 4.5 games of the best record in baseball. So there's a lot of good teams and there are no great teams. And the Guardians are one of those good teams. And it's just depends on any given week. They're the best of the good teams or they might be the worst of the good teams. I don't know. They got swept by the Diamondbacks and the Brewers. Those teams have been two of the hottest teams in baseball, but the Guardians have outside of those two series as well. So it's a very confusing year, and that's why, even though you hear me every week on this podcast say I hate the just get in and get hot, I do think there's an element of you need to, like, that's part of this, because there is no team bullying everybody else. So, I mean, we're talking right now, and this is like a sad, disappointing podcast, right? Like everyone's going to come hate listen to this because the Guardians just got swept and they've been a frustrating team. And saying that, they're a game out of the best record in baseball. They're a half game behind the Yankees and the Orioles. And that's only because the Yankees and the Orioles have played one more game. You know, they go win 2 or 3 in New York, and what do you know? All of a sudden, they have the best record in the American League again. It's like, all these teams are very evenly matched. Maybe not necessarily by talent, but like by 125 games of evidence. And so I don't even know how to answer that, because truly, like, it feels like the NFL, where it's like any team can beat any team. Like I don't know. Like, it's not insane for the Cardinals to beat the Niners one time. Like that, it happens. And I feel like that's it's really, I've never experienced this. There's always some powerhouse. There's always a team that wins 102 games. And you're not going to have that. And so, I mean, the Twins and the Royals are also very flawed, and yet at the same time also seem very terrifying. Like, I don't know how this AL Central race is going to shake out. You've got 7 games coming up with the Royals in a span of, I think, a week and a half. You're going to learn a lot. Right there. But we thought we were going to learn a ton in the Twins series, and through 2 games of that series, we thought we learned a ton, and then 2 games later, we realized we learned nothing. It's like this is all a simulation.
I was thinking about that today, because I had seen through TikTok quite a few recent videos pop up of complaints, people playing NCAA College Football 25, and showing evidence how the simulation always finds a way to keep the score close.
Yes.
It's just some team moves down the field with 5 seconds on the clock and finds a way to run 7 plays. And then people are like, this is not real. This should not happen. Are you suggesting that we're all just living in that world? Somebody is playing right now. Somebody just fired up MLB The Show and did a simulation of the season, and we happen to be sitting here living it.
I told this story on the podcast once, but I will tell it again. I think it was Triple Play 99. There was like a glitch. And I remember no matter how many runs, the game was tied going into extra innings, and no matter how many runs I scored in the top, the computer would score the same number of runs in the bottom of the inning. And it went like 30 some innings. And the score is like 28-28. And it's just, I'd score, finally, I'd have like a 4-run top of the 28th inning. And then they'd come back with 4 runs. And I was like, okay, there's a glitch going on here. I don't know what to do.
There's a glitch.
And finally it ended when they hit a walk-off. I think the final score was like 30-29. And I've never been more defeated in my life. And that's kind of what this is like. Just everyone's going to be about even, except the White Sox, who are officially eliminated. Pour one out. To the White Sox.
For as much as this team loves Mario Kart, this MLB season has been Mario Kart. You notice anybody that's played Mario Kart, 1 through 8 racers, you ever notice how you could be in 8th place and then you just have a good last half lap and all of a sudden you passed everybody?
Because you get all the good items.
I fell off.
You're not getting
I fell off how many
second?
platforms? Lakitu had to drop me on the road how many times? And I still found a way. I think that's his name.
Yeah.
And I still found a way to finish second in this race or first. How is that possible? It's because the people that made Mario Kart, they purposely made the power-ups more powerful for people later in the race. If you're a first and you get that little spinning question mark, you're going to get some crap that nobody wants to be your power-up. And there's always that blue turtle shell out there. And by God, Zach, the blue turtle shell has been taking out the best team in baseball every single week. You think it's the Orioles? Boom. You think it's the Yankees? Bang. Oh, it's the Guardians right now? 7 games in a row. You just fell off the platforms 3 times in a row as everybody passed you. This season has been Mario Kart. This is like a race on Rainbow Road if I've ever seen it.
I think it's important for them to win 2 or 3 in New York.
Leave it to you to bring us back to a serious place.
The Twins blew a golden opportunity on Sunday, blowing a 4-run lead, I think in the 7th. That would have gotten them within 1 game. Now remember, the Guardians do have the tiebreaker over the Twins. Those teams will play 4 times in Cleveland in mid-September. But the Royals are lurking right there too. Like they're humming along. Bobby Witt Jr. is incredible. It's going to be a fun 6 weeks. At least
before we get to our surprise, to wrap up the show, you promised me a story. I'm here for story time.
David Justice.
Yeah, something you're working on.
No, I mean, this isn't like anything crazy. The Collectors Convention was in town a few weeks ago, and I was able to pop in the very first night. I think I was on the road the rest of the trip, or the rest of the convention, and I would have loved to go back every day, but I had a very limited window there, and I had an assignment they asked me, who was your favorite player growing up? My editors. And I said, David Justice. Like, I loved emulating that swing. He always seemed cool, really good, obviously. And they said, go try to find a David Justice card. And now, so this event, it's called the National. It's every year. It's been in Cleveland a handful of times, I think. And I mean, I'm telling you, TJ, there must have been 50 million sports cards at this thing. I mean, I don't I don't know how to put a number on it. There weren't that many bobblehead stations, but like the IX Center's 530,000 square feet, and it was filled with table after table after table after table of baseball cards, sports cards. So there's a David Justice in there somewhere, but I couldn't find it. And you know, the story is always better when the journey is worth chronicling. So I'm going table to table trying to find this thing. Had to like argue with people trying to haggle. There was I did find like there was a whole Atlanta Braves portrait set, and there was a David Justice in there for the small price of $4,000. So I was just looking for like a $2 David Justice card from 1997 or something. Anyway, I ended up having to buy 2 boxes of baseball cards, a 1991 and a 1998. So the 91 would have been with Atlanta. I think that was the year after he was Rookie of the Year for the Braves. And then the 98 would have been on the heels of, which I was maybe his best season with Cleveland in 97, the World Series losing team. And of course, I was in a hotel room in Philadelphia just ripping these packs open, looking for a Justice, and I found Ricky Leday, who he was traded for. I found every single one of his teammates. Found like every single member of that 97 Indians team, and could not find David Justice until one of the last packs I had. Like I think in total I bought like the 2 cases of baseball cards had like 750 cards in them maybe. And he was card like 698.
Oh my goodness!
Which anyway, I wrote a story about this. It'll be on The Athletic in the next day or two, even though I just spoiled it. But it was a fun journey, and I mean, it's just that story will be littered with names you haven't thought about in 25 years.
Well, I'm glad the journey was worth it. Because if you would have went through all of that and didn't find a Justice, I think I might have him somewhere back here, somewhere in a book. I would have just handed it to you.
Yeah, what do I do with it now?
It's kind of the end of every long, drawn-out movie where they try so hard to accomplish a goal, and then finally, at the end, they accomplish it, and then it's like, now what? How do you just go back to living life after you accomplish the goal you've been working so hard for?
One of my favorite stories I've ever worked on is the search for Shorty Gallagher. It was this guy.
That right?
Yeah, this guy named, I know his name. But he's a longtime Cleveland fan, and he was trying to collect a picture of every player who ever played for Cleveland. And, it's easy to do for anyone who's played for them in the last, 80 years. But you're digging for Randy Kula is his name, by the way. Awesome dude. You're searching. So Shorty Gallagher played like, I think, both ends of a doubleheader one day in 1908, and that's it. How do you find a picture of him? And there's no evidence of his family, his life, anything like that. This guy dug through archives for years and years and years and years and years trying to find a picture of him, and has found his stats from like minor league baseball, independent league baseball, reached out to some cemeteries where people with that name were buried who might have been related to him, like did everything you could possibly do to find him, and has not been able to. And it kind of makes the story better. Because like when that does happen, I even asked him, like, then what? And he said, in a weird way, sometimes I'm not sure I want it to end. Because he's still like, he'll wake up every Saturday, go to his laptop, and it's like, all right, maybe today's the day. And just having that, I guess that one box unchecked keeps you hungry. I don't know. It's a fascinating psychology to study.
I'll admit I've thought about it. What would our show be like the day after the Cleveland wins the World Series? What would we do on the show? What would we talk about?
Bradley Zimmer.
How would we handle that? Bradley Zimmer. We'd mention every name, the broken road that led us to this moment. How would we get there? What would we talk about? Would we just read through stories of people thinking of family members? You do such a great job of that every single year. The stories of people with their families and friends and people they've lost over the years and that form connections watching baseball in Cleveland and what it would have meant to be together, and we're all in tears. Are we just going to sit around and read those stories?
Sure.
Are we going to go for 24 hours straight on a stream? Like, what are we doing?
I don't know. But I think it's better to not plan that. Because then you're living in the moment.
Yeah. But sometimes the moment is going to swallow you, as you were going through panic before Game 5 in Chicago in 2016. Sometimes the moment is going to chew you up and spit you out if you're not at least thinking about it somewhat. But I would be lying if I didn't think, or if I said I hadn't thought about that at least once ever in my life. What would that look like? What would we do?
Yeah, I mean, I chronicled some of the Cavs championship run and aftermath for Cleveland.com, but I wasn't like at Quicken Loans Arena on a nightly basis the year after, so I do wonder too just what that's like. You know, once the ring ceremony's out of the way and then fans are mad again because Tyronn Lue didn't sub in this guy in the second quarter, and like you're just back to square one, or is it like I don't know. I don't know what that's like either.
It's weird. It is weird. Well, you keep thinking about that, because someday, I promise you, it is going to happen. We will still be a thing, and we're going to get to do it. I promise you.
Probably this
Even
year.
though I have no, I have no way of changing any of the outcomes. I still promise you it's going to happen. I promised you something else too, a special surprise as a sign-off for your birthday. You know, I couldn't let this birthday pass without asking our artificial intelligent friends to put together something for everyone to enjoy. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this special birthday message for our pal, Zach Meisel.
Why is this the beat?
Birthday cheer for Zack today. Friends with you will shout hooray. Austin Hedges, Yu Chang too. Roberto Clemente, glad with you. Bobby Higginson joins our song. Albie Lopez, come along. Evan Gaddis, say ya too. Tony Cruz, we're here for you. Happy birthdays all around. In our hearts your love is found.
I'm sorry.
Sing it loud, let's make it bright. Celebrating through the night. Cake and candles, laughter loud.
I'm sorry.
This crew, we feel so proud. Zack and Buddy.
You forgot.
You know, sometimes you have big ideas of something, and you're like, oh, this will be great. This will be great. It was not great. But if I had to hear it, so did you.
She omitted the best baseball player born on August 18th, Pablo Sanchez from Backyard Baseball.
Okay. There's always next year.
It doesn't have to be with this. This can be one and done.
Okay. Happy birthday, buddy.
Thanks.
Thanks for hanging out with us. See ya.